All right, so this is our Unit 2 CER. This is a graphic organizer to help you. Our goal is to defend a point of view using a clearly constructed claim, evidence, and reasoning. We are going to be talking about our unit goal, which is to what extent does today's American government meet the standards that the founders expected? So we just changed that into a question. Does today's American government meet the standards the founders expected? In other words, is our government living up to the values set forth in the founding documents? Think about the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Federalist Papers, any of this information, right? Are we currently doing what they expected? So you're going to use this graphic organizer to help organize your thoughts before the discussion. Here's the catch. You're only graded on what you say. So you can complete this graphic organizer and have the most beautiful graphic organizer ever created, and then not say anything during the discussion. That would get you a 0. The flip side of that, if you did not do the graphic organizer, there's always the chance, in theory, that you could just have a great discussion because you know this so well. You could still get a 4 on that discussion. You're only graded on what you say. This graphic organizer is just to help you organize your thoughts, to have a plan of attack. It's something that you will have open during your discussions and you can reference, but it's not going to be like a script that you can just read through. It's there for like support if you're like, man, I forget the exact wording of Federalist 51, but let me just read this quote from Madison real quick. And then I'm going to bring my eyes back to the rest of my group and finish my thought, share my reasoning as I look around my group. So we have a list of possible topics that you are going to highlight. You get to choose from the First Amendment or the other amendments in the Bill of Rights. The First Amendment has so much on it, so much on the freedom of speech, so much on freedom of religion. That's kind of its own separate topic. If you want to do stuff about freedom of the press, if there's plenty of stories out there about freedom of the press, you can do that. Freedom to petition, freedom of assembly, you can do that as well. However, we have links over here for these 2 freedoms mentioned in the First Amendment. Any of these topics, any of these ideas listed here, we have links in this document over here with possible resources, possible sources for you. If you want to do other amendments, we recommend the Second and Fourth Amendment because there's so much about those 2. But if you want to do the Fifth Amendment, you want to do Ninth or 10th Amendment, totally up to you. You have that option, but you would have to find evidence, find sources on your own. We also have separation of powers. Is the Supreme Court fulfilling its duty? Is it doing what Article 3 says it's supposed to be doing? What about the presidency? Is the president doing what Article 2 says it should be doing? Now, we didn't have Congress listed here, but you could do Congress as well. Checks and balances. Are these different branches of government, the judicial, legislative, and executive branches, are they checking each other's power effectively in the correct way? There's lots of information out there about federalism, really anything that has to do with states' rights. There's a lot about voting issues. That's why that is here. We have some helpful sources there. We also have other. Pretty much any current event that has to do with American government, that has to do with civics, like you could research that and have a discussion about it. Just run it by me first, right? When you look at these possible sources that are linked in this document, we'd like you to use more than one source. You want to make sure you find something unique to say, so you're not just repeating the same things your classmates have said. There could be 2 people in the same group with the First Amendment. There could be 2 people talking about freedom of speech. And if you look at the document, you want to make sure you have multiple sources so that not every person is talking about this cheerleader and Snapchat. It's a really popular topic that people like to talk about. So you want to make sure you have more than just that one source or that one story. Again, these are just possible topics for you, possible sources. If you want to find your own information, you can. But within each category, there are multiple sources for you to check out. Separation of powers, checks and balances, federalism. Again, like I said, a lot of voting, but there are other topics. Talk about Eighth Amendment, Fourth Amendment, speedy trial. You have rule of law, which is also a popular one. There's quite a bit on rule of law, including some more recent stories. Recently, President Biden pardoned his son, Hunter. Is that what the founding fathers would have expected? If you read the article, there are some people that argue that he did use his power appropriately, and there are some that are arguing that he did not use his power appropriately. What would the founding fathers have said about his use of a pardon on his son? When you go through and you pick a topic, please, please, please do this section first before you make a claim. Please gather evidence on both sides. What are people saying on this side? What are people saying on this side? And then make your decision. Then you can say, well, in regards to whatever, First Amendment, separation of powers, today's government is or is not meeting the expectations. And then you're going to get into the connections to the unit. What did the founders actually want? Right? What are they trying to prevent or avoid? Is that what we are currently doing in American government? So give me specific evidence. Give me vocab from the unit. Define things like rule of law, limited government. All right. And this is where you're going to maybe quote the Constitution. Oh, well, in Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, it says that Congress can do this. Right? Your reasoning in your own words, why did Congress get that power? Blah, blah, blah. So blue box here is all about the unit. What did we learn about in the unit? What does the Declaration say? The articles say, Constitution, amendments, any definitions, anything we talked about, that would go here. Then you have connections to the present. What does our government look like today? What is our government currently doing? Right? What sort of decisions are being made? Does that match the standard that the founders expected? All right, so here on this side, this is where you're going to cite your articles, right? According to the Wall Street Journal, according to the Washington Post, blah, blah, blah. Over here, your reasoning, explain that. I would say that anytime you have a bullet point of evidence, you should have at least one, if not two, bullet points explaining that evidence. And then down here, list some questions that you might want to ask people during the discussion. Because as we know, in the rubric, part of the requirement is that you ask higher level questions. And so it's okay to list a few here ahead of time. And then as the need arises, or when it's the right time in the discussion, be like, ooh, I had a question about that. You can go down to this section of your graphic organizer and be like, oh, I want to ask this question. Now is a good time to ask this question. It's relevant, it's higher level. Good. The rubric is not new. We have seen this before. We know that we get 2 points for a claim that passes the CARES test, right? Make sure that it passes that CARES test, especially being confident, right? That's C. Make sure it's relevant and make sure that it's specific, right? The topic that we have given you automatically is going to be evidence-based and arguable. So make sure it passes all 5 aspects of that CARES test. We've talked a lot about evidence and reasoning, multiple specific pieces of relevant evidence, cite when appropriate, reasoning more than once that clearly explains that connection. How does this specific evidence support this claim? Addressing the group, comparing and or contrasting to own argument. It could be others' arguments as well. At least twice. You can compare twice, you can contrast twice, you can compare once, contrast once. It's totally up to you, right? If somebody's like, ooh, the First Amendment, we are fulfilling or we are meeting the founders' expectations. And they mention the case about the cheerleader. You could say, I found similar evidence that contradicts that goes against that shows that actually, in fact, they are not standard because blah, 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 blah. Make sure you compare and contrast twice. And then this is where you ask the good questions, at least one higher level, right? Not yes, no. And we're not just repeating information said by another classmate. Last but not least, making sure that you are actively listening, being respectful. Those should be gimme points down there at the end. We're going to multiply or divide your score by 20, multiply that by 4 to get that average. And then that, we'll use this scale to translate, right? 3.5 and above will be a 4, 3.49 to 2.5 will be a 3, and so on and so forth.